Alright, it's no secret the Marathon is a divisive game. You have Bungie fanboys hailing it as the greatest game ever made, you have Bungie haters writing it off as the next Concord, and then you have the level-headed silent majority just being like, it's fine I guess, but I don't really think it's for me.
Might have come here for a Mr. Fruit hot take, but the honest to God truth is, I'm very indifferent. I don't love it, I didn't hate it, I just thought it was fine, but I was expecting more than fine from Bungie. I was expecting, or rather hoping, for a banger.
So in this video, I wanted to weigh in with a pretty measured take on why I think this game is not going to be successful, at least as it stands right now. If Bungie delays the game, which I highly suggest they do, then it may stand a chance. But by all reports, they are dead set on that September 23rd release date, and it's closing in fast. So first, let's get the elephant out of the room and address the haters that are saying that it'll be the next Concord. This is just outright wrong, and let me explain why. The thing you really have to understand with Concord is it was a monumental, once-in-a-lifetime type of failure. It was honestly a perfect storm of things going wrong to result in some truly mind-bogglingly low player counts, especially given the staggering development budget that it had. To say that they didn't hit the mark would be an understatement. This was an anomaly and something that is unlikely to be replicated. Bungie has much more brand recognition than Firewalk Studios, so on that aspect alone, it will have more players. Hell, the closed alpha had more players than the peak of Concord launch, so it's not going to be a Concord. Bungie hasn't released a new IP in over a decade, and love them or hate them, they are a studio that has made some classic games and people will definitely want to see what they cooked up next. Firewalk had none of that gaming pedigree, so they didn't get the same interest and hype around Concord. I'm not saying they aren't talented devs, I'm just saying that Bungie is a studio that when they release something, the gaming world pays attention. And real quick, I know I said new IP and technically Marathon is an old IP from the 90s, but still, it's a completely new title. But I had to mention this, otherwise there would surely be some, well actually, idiot in my comments arguing about semantics. But with that disclaimer of sorts out of the way, there are still some glaring issues and mistakes being made with Bungie that have a striking resemblance to Concord, so let's talk about it. The first and biggest mistake that they are making is not letting this game be free to play. Yes, I am aware that a big reason for this is to put a paywall in front of cheaters, and while I hate cheaters, Destiny 2 is a game where you have to pay to play Trials of Osiris, and it is often littered with cheaters. So I think the benefit of limiting cheaters by making it a paid title is outweighed by the negative of there being a lot less people that are going to try Marathon because it will cost money. And I know studios have to make money and can't just make games for free, but this is a big deal. A massive reason for Fortnite's popularity was because it was free to play. There was literally no barrier to entry, so you had nothing to lose by trying it out. This resulted in a lot more eyes on the game and exposed them to a lot more players that would eventually become fans of the game. And this was back in 2017 when free games were far less common. However, it is quite commonplace now in 2025 to the point where many people don't really want to shell out money for games anymore. The industry has conditioned an entire generation of gamers to expect most games to be free to play, especially in the shooter genre. So you're drastically limiting your reach by charging for it. Obviously, they may walk this decision back in the future, but as of the making of this video, they seem to be going ahead with charging a yet-to-be-announced price for the game. And speaking of gaming landscape changes from 2017 to 2025, I think by and large, people are either tired of live service games or are already fully invested in one. I know for me and many fans of this channel, that game is Destiny 2. Bungie smartly has crafted a game in Marathon that will not compete with their PvE-centric Destiny crowd, so they're not going to really cannibalize their current fan base, but does Marathon do enough to entice people to leave games that they already love like Fortnite, Call of Duty, Escape from Tarkov, Hunt Showdown, CSGO, Valorant, or Apex Legends? Initial reception to the game has been lukewarm at best, so I would say no. And as someone who has done a deep dive on the philosophy of Bungie's game development, I can tell you that at launch, it certainly won't do enough to pull people away. That is because, from the Bungie general manager's own mouth, they are not worried about how their product launches. They are worried about where it is at in a year's time.
We would hire the best talent in the industry. We would give them a lot of freedom to use their creative guts and their creative process to make whatever they considered to be the best game possible. We'd release that product with a big bang and the largest marketing push we could manage, and we'd trust that success by every definition would follow from that. And this was all summed up at the time by our studio motto: we make games we want to play. And we believed that when you trust your gut on making something awesome, making something that you can't wait to play, that all of the different forms of success that you might want critical acclaim, sales, engaged players, those all just flow naturally and intuitively from that. And this picture is old and grainy because it's an old picture I actually found on my cell phone, because we took down that motto a little while after D2 launch as we evolved our view of what success really meant. And our new studio motto, this is a more recent picture, is we create worlds that inspire friendship. But besides adopting a more global and inclusive view, this is really about a shift away from that boxed product mindset into the service mindset. So if that's the boxed product approach, then what is the service approach and mindset by contrast? And more than anything else, being a service is about being fast. For a live service, more than anything, more important even than quality, a live service is about being fast.
Are you sure about that?
And a fast game will become great. But a great, slow game will very quickly fall behind. This shift in our mindset to focus on velocity has meant that for our future games that we're building, we mentally shift a lot of our focus away from the launch of the product. Because like all of our industry experience and training, all that box product training has us traditionally laser focused from like day one on having the best possible game on the day it launches. That's what you're losing sleep over, is like what's gonna happen when we finally get to launch day. But if you're trying to make a live service, we found you should actually kind of de-emphasize that launch in your mind. Like a much more important question is, what is your roadmap and release tools gonna look like for the first year after your game launches? Because you can launch with a game that blows people's minds and is super high polish. Or you can launch with a game that has lots of promise, but a bunch of like janky issues on day one. And the sifter that's gonna determine which of those two games is relevant 12, 24 months later is their velocity. And the reality is, like, if you try to launch a new live service game in the 2020s, it's kind of like that Pixar quote, like, a simple fact is your game is probably gonna suck at launch. And that's okay. Like, launch is not the end of your journey. Launch is the beginning. Like, no new game iterated on in secret for however many years can show up and immediately beat the existing live services that have had the advantage of being able to iterate directly with their community for 5 or 10 years. You don't get to win that battle on day one. But if you're focused on your velocity, not your position at launch, then the better challenge becomes how fast can you improve your game once you are in that same direct dialogue with your community.
Pretty enlightening stuff, huh? And you can see this development philosophy in action with Marathon. They are launching with 6 characters to play and 3 maps, with a 4th endgame map to come shortly after launch. To put this in perspective, Apex Legends launched with 8 playable characters, and that was a free-to-play game. So to say the content offering at launch will be lacking is a bit of an understatement. I'm sure they have some other heroes cooked up to release in subsequent seasons to entice players to come back, but I need Bungie to hear this and listen to this. First impressions matter a ton now. Sure, everyone let Bungie get away with releasing Destiny way underbaked and developing it on the go because it was a unique, never-before-seen type of game, and it launched in an era before people were embedded in live service games already. The gaming world is vastly different than 2014 with Destiny 1 and from 2017 with Destiny 2. And Destiny 2 almost died back in 2018. If it wasn't for them over-delivering on Forsaken, they would have gone under. And that's straight from the horse's mouth.
So this was our weekly active users for Destiny 2 in the first few months. And for comparison, this is what Destiny 1 looked like. So far so good. But then this started happening. And this moment right here in February of 2018 was fucking terrifying. So this graph shows the trend of our weekly active users. And at the rate that we were shedding players, we did the math. I remember being in the meeting, we did the math. And if this continued for just 5 more weeks, we would run out of players. The entire population would be gone. And we were seriously like looking at potentially being 1 month away from having to just close up shop on Destiny 2 altogether.
But in 2025, you have to bring it, because the competition has never been more fierce. I've already talked about a ton of free shooters earlier, or embedded extraction shooters like Tarkov, which has had 10 years to grow and develop to become the premier extraction shooter, but that ship has sailed in 2025. You can't really expect to build a game with your community anymore. People's attention spans are shrinking by the day, and gamers just don't want to stick around through these growing pains. They also have a plethora of options now, and they aren't going to sit around and wait for a game to get good. They will just go play something else. Sure, some players may hop back in for new updates, but I'm telling you, launch is crucial. We have seen games basically die right after launch because they didn't impress. Sure, the studio may make changes and it becomes decent down the line, but most people don't go back. I heard Battlefield 2042 and Halo Infinite both got massively improved like a year after launch, but by then, it's too late. And the numbers back me up. Their player counts were abysmal just a couple months post-release. Marvel Rivals is one of the rare live service style games that has launched a critical success. It peaked at 642,000 players within a month from launch, and it's now averaging 134,000 players, which is still a very strong showing. But that also means it's a decrease from 80% from its peak. I want to be clear, this is normal. You can never sustain your peak. But the point I'm making is because this is normal, you need a massive audience at launch because you will bleed players. And I fear that by paywalling Marathon, they will not have a ton of players to start out with, and they are limiting their reach drastically. So when players inevitably fall off after the first few months, it will be felt much more harshly. An 80% loss on 100,000 players is only 20,000 people playing your game. An 80% loss on 500,000 players is still 100,000 players, a very healthy player population. Marvel Rivals has the Marvel brand name attached to it, and it launched with 18 heroes to play. So it launched for free and had triple the amount of playable characters than Marathon will have. Again, I know it isn't a perfect comparison because of genre differences and whatever, but it's a recent live service game that launched for free and was actually successful. And this is an exception, not the rule. More new live service games are failing than thriving these days. And as someone who has 10,000 hours in Destiny 2, I know how Bungie operates. They don't care about delivering a super high quality product anymore. They care more about player retention metrics and getting you to sign in week to week. But as I said, gamers aren't very tolerant of half-baked games anymore, and they move on very quickly. Case in point, my next example, Helldivers 2. At its peak on Steam, it had 458,000 players, and it's now averaging 30,000 players, which is like a 95% drop-off. But to be fair, let's do 5 months post-launch to keep the Marvel Rivals comparison the same. Well, those numbers are actually worse. But keep in mind, Helldivers was a paid title and probably around the same price that Marathon will be. I couldn't get Escape from Tarkov Steam data, but here's a chart I found. I'm unsure how accurate it is, but it looks like the player counts are quite consistent. It's an old title now, so it has a pretty embedded fan base. So that brings us to Marathon. By making it pay to play, it will limit its reach drastically, meaning many people won't even give it a try, myself included. It also seems to be the type of game that grows on you over time, but if people don't even get their foot in the door, then Bungie won't be able to get their hooks into them in the first place. For the people that do shell out money for it, they will play it on launch and many will drop off. They may come back after the first wipe or season or whatever, but if Bungie doesn't deliver on their post-release content roadmap fast and furious, then it will be game over before they can even get going. Destiny 1 and 2 launched very bare bones, but they eventually developed into something great. But I think with Marathon, they aren't even going to get that chance. Avengers and Suicide Squad also had roadmaps for future content, but the player base dropped off so fast that it didn't even matter. No Man's Sky is one of the rare exceptions where they actually earn their players back. But in most cases, once people stop, they don't come back. It happened plain as day with Battlefield 2042, it happened with Halo Infinite, and it will happen with Marathon. I need studios to understand that people want to play complete polished games, and 2025 is proving that with the likes of Blueprints and Clair Obscur Expedition 33. These are games developed by small indie studios that are garnering massive success and acclaim because they are good, polished, well-made games that are made out of passion. And these examples are proof that people will still pay money for new games as long as they get a complete experience in return, and they deliver that. Bungie can say all they want that they are making Marathon out of passion, but I don't buy it. It feels like they are trend chasing to a once underexplored genre, but now there are 2 other extraction shooters set to come out this year, and EA just cancelled the Titanfall extraction shooter. And adding this in post-script, but there's been some discussion around this new Arc Raiders game which doesn't have a release date, but it is in alpha at the same time as Marathon, and a lot of extraction shooter players are kind of more keen on this. Granted, it is third person, so it's different, but it's still competition in the extraction shooter genre in the same year that Marathon's releasing. And here's one tweet that I found interesting. It has pretty much everything people have been saying is missing in Marathon: crafting, solo matchmaking, proxy chat, AI enemy variety, audio, skill tree. I mean, I'm sure the audio will get fixed. Skill tree, detailed maps, both in and out of POIs, etc. They're in the same genre, so should be compared. So obviously, if you don't like third persons and you prefer first person, Marathon will take the cake. But just as far as the extraction shooter genre, it seems to be appealing to that type of player more. It's classic AAA gaming in the modern day. See a new and exciting genre and try to capitalize on it. But by the time the game finally releases, the trend is over. The trendsetters like Tarkov are successful, but a big reason for that success is because they developed the idea first and it was out of passion. They wanted to share something new and exciting with an audience that had never seen something like that before. Then other studios see the success and chase the money rather than the passion, only to get burned because development timelines these days are so long that you have to be a trendsetter now. And the irony is Bungie used to be that studio. They helped pioneer online competitive shooters with Halo. They developed something truly unique in a looter shooter FPS game with raids and Destiny. And now they are the trend chasers. It's just sad to see. But the point is that if people are paying for a game, they expect a lot. Again, Bungie may back down on the purchase price and make it free to play, and they may delay it, but this video is from the perspective of what we know now, and what we know is not great. Just look at the closed alpha test. Within a week of that launching, Tim the Tatman was back to Call of Duty, Shroud was back on Diablo 4. They tried it, said, yeah, this is fine, but it needs more time to cook, and then they left. I've watched many videos on Marathon from people that have played the game. SkillUp is a great creator whose opinion I respect greatly, and I often align with. And the reception to the game really seems to be like, yeah, it's fine, but I'm not yearning to play more of it. I enjoyed it, but it doesn't have an it factor. And that is so crucial, because again, a lot of people who play these kinds of games have better options elsewhere. You have to do something unique and different that no one else is offering, otherwise people just aren't going to bother. They aren't going to leave a game that they already have thousands of hours in just to play a game that does the same thing, only worse. Everyone compares it to Concord, but the real comparison should be Anthem. There was tons of hype around that game, far more than Marathon in my opinion, but it launched too soon before it was ready, and within a few months of release, it was basically dead in the water. That is the true Marathon comparison to me. Everyone back then was saying, oh, but they have that BioWare magic, just like they'll say it with Bungie. They have that Bungie touch, that it factor. But by all accounts, it is just a stock standard extraction shooter that brings very little new to the table. Sure, Bungie made Halo and Destiny, but that is no guarantee for future success. Just like BioWare couldn't make it work with Anthem, I think Bungie will struggle to make Marathon into a monumental success. Marathon also has no solo mode, at least not at launch. I get the reasoning behind this, as they make games to play with friends or whatever their motto is, plus the game is made to be balanced around having 3-player teams, but that is just yet another thing that will limit its reach. A lot of people don't have 2 friends to game with at any given time. I made solo content on Destiny, and I know for a fact that a lot of players play that game solo, and lots like to play Fortnite or Apex solo. This game is not good for solo players, so again, it's just a way that they are limiting their player base. And then they say the game is not for everyone, and I get that sentiment, I really do. It's a popular thing to say because like, oh, well, we are just making a game that is for a certain type of player. But I don't think they know what that audience is. By all accounts, from the things I've read and the videos I've watched, they're just kind of making an extraction shooter that's more appealing to everyone. So if you don't like extraction shooters, then yeah, the game's obviously not for you. But if you do love extraction shooters, it seems that this game doesn't really understand what people love about them. It doesn't have that steep learning curve and knowledge gap of a game like Escape from Tarkov, which is what keeps players playing that game over and over and sinking thousands of hours into it. That's why it has such a strong and committed fan base, because it has such a strong identity. So it's likely not going to pull the Tarkov players away from Tarkov because it's too watered down.
But I also walk away with 2 big questions. Number 1, where is that hook that makes me want to play Marathon over the other extraction shooters that I could be playing, or over the other competitive experiences out there right now? In my time with this game, I was enjoying it, but I couldn't feel that thing that made me go, yes, I can see why someone would want to devote their life to this game. I just couldn't feel that, and so I'm still waiting for it.
It's also not going to pull PvE players, even though there are some PvE elements, because as I can tell you from Destiny, people that hate PvP don't want anything to do with PvP. So even if they wanted to dabble in Marathon for the story and lore or the secrets and the supposed raid-like elements, they are unlikely to because they may have to engage in some PvP.
The game's narrative is, right now, not really written yet. The narrative team were clear that the narrative framework has been built, aka how Bungie plans to tell a story in Marathon, but that story itself is apparently going to be written between now and launch. Bungie have also made clear that we should also expect a very found lore approach to storytelling, less focused on cutscenes and characters, and more focused on world building and narrative delivered through factional bounties.
But then people who do want PvP are left wanting as well, because from what I've seen, in many matches, you can go the whole match without seeing an enemy team.
But the problem is that right now, you are spending way too much time doing busy work on the map rather than fighting enemy players. And so that tense extraction loop that Bungie are aiming for here, that loop isn't fully closed.
So people who want their PvP fix are just gonna go play something else, like Apex Legends. I bring Apex up a lot because from the initial reveal, Marathon just looked exactly like an Apex clone. And from my comment section, it's basically shittier Apex Legends but with a Roblox filter and way worse movement. So sure, they say the game isn't made for everyone, but they are also trying to appeal a little bit to every type of player who could have an interest in an extraction shooter. It has some build crafting elements. Cool, that's fun, but the real build crafters will be playing Path of Exile.
That's not the only thing missing from Marathon right now though. I do think these runner kits are really basic to the point where I'm like, come on Bungie, what else you got? This is the studio that designed the Strand and Stasis subclasses. And here the kits are like, ping nearby enemies once every 30 seconds, or pull up a shield that can block a little bit of damage, or go invisible for a few seconds. Honestly, I'm just gonna say it, these kits are tactical and balanced, but they're really boring and generic, and I think Bungie can do way, way better than this.
It has extraction shooter elements, but every team has an exfil, so you don't often get those really butt-clenching moments where you're trying to escape and the other teams are bearing down on you trying to stop you. It takes that urgency and excitement away. Another thing the extraction fans seem to love is proximity chat, and they have said Marathon won't have that on launch due to trying to avoid toxicity. Have you ever heard of a mute button? Now, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe this will all work into a game that has a little something for everyone. It has a compelling story for the story-driven folks, tons of cool secrets for the Easter egg lovers, fun and exciting builds for the build crafters, fun missions for the PvE players, and lots of exciting gunfights for the PvP players. But I just don't see it. Games can absolutely take inspiration from other games and incorporate elements into their game to make it fun and unique. I praise Split Fiction for this. They took inspiration from so many games, so it was like a loving homage to many games from my past. It can be done well, but you also have the flip side of the coin where some games incorporate things from other games and it just feels like a watered down version of what made that game so great. Like people who love Sekiro, and you may get some other parry-based games that just don't feel as good. I feel like that is how Marathon will be. It doesn't have enough of any one element to scratch the itch that people love about certain other titles. Like I said, people just go back to the games they love for the reasons that they love them. I love a buffet every once in a while, but if I want a premium steak, I'm gonna go to a steakhouse. The art style is also quite divisive. It is definitely a statement. I'll be honest, I was more hyped about Marathon before I saw the gameplay. The art style really drew me in, but when I saw it in practice, I was extremely underwhelmed. The marketing material and art style before the reveal was so good that the end product just felt really bland by comparison. I know a lot of people will say, Tizzle, it's an alpha. Yes, I'm sure the finished product is going to look better, but that doesn't even matter when you look at all the other problems that I've listed. By all accounts, Concord was actually a fun game and the gunplay was great. Like the moment-to-moment gameplay was actually quite fun, but that just doesn't cut it in this market anymore. I've also heard X-Defiant was good, the finals was good. I think all these games are decent at some level, but if they just don't have a hook and do something to really change up the formula to draw players in, then they're just flat out not going to be successful. Anthem, for all its problems, was also a really fun game. I actually really enjoyed my time with Anthem. But at the end of the day, gameplay isn't enough to carry a game anymore. Everyone who talks about Marathon basically just says, it's fine. Like, yeah, it's good. It's not amazing. It's not horrible. It's fine.
Much to my surprise, Marathon isn't as far along as I had hoped it might be, And while I really enjoy many parts of it, the gaps in it made it difficult for me to get a sense of how this is going to launch, and it made it impossible for me to predict where this one day might end up. Marathon is a straight up PvP extraction shooter. Before I went into this preview session, I had wondered if Bungie were looking to do something more ambitious with the extraction shooter genre. I wondered if they might be using extraction as a foundation for a more persistent, social, story-driven experience, something that might bridge the gap between PvE and PvP, something that might appeal to Destiny players who are, by and large, a PvE-focused audience. If any of those things do exist in Marathon right now, I didn't see them. As someone who's broadly familiar with the extraction subgenre, this felt pretty familiar.
For me personally, I think it, and again, I'm talking as like a Destiny novice, but as someone who has jumped in periodically throughout its life cycles. To me, it feels like Destiny 1 at launch, where there's a lot of cool stuff and the framework is there and it's fun, running and jumping and shooting and enemies are exploding. But there's just, I'm looking for like the through line. And here, I don't know what it is in terms of like what we kind of hinted at with our first part of the conversation is the social aspect, how that works, the story, how that works, and kind of also how that's connected.
But like Marathon doesn't have that. There's zero intrigue and like there's zero like emotional or narrative promise to it. So from a gameplay perspective, there's no promise, and a narrative perspective, there's no promise.
Yeah.
What am I buying into that game for?
I know.
And I think as well, like, I think we should probably like when you phrase it like that, we need to like confirm the word promise. That's not to say the game has no potential. But what we're talking about is that like what's this game sort of like promising to the market? What's it promising it will be? What's it promising it will change? Like, because again, I think this is a solid enough extraction shooter, but I think Bungie have always done well and truly more and had more ambition than than what we're seeing right now. Yeah. It's possible that actually there is more that we just haven't seen. It will come online and between now and launch, and maybe that other map is so good that it actually does silence us. And I think that's another point. Don't forget, Destiny 1 was basically saved by the Vault of Glass. Okay, it was like one experience that everyone was like, all right, this game fucking sucks, but the Vault of Glass is cool, and I'm gonna keep coming back for it.
It weirds me out how similar that the trajectory of those two games are.
I agree completely.
Like I find it so weird that like they are putting out something that is not that interesting, but then going, we got something coming. It was exactly the same with Destiny. I'm like, why are you doing this on purpose? Like,
it just felt bare bones at first. Like you're like, what is this game? What are we doing? Like, I feel like it's primed because it has like all those elements floating around it. Like I really am into the visual design.
Yes,
it sounds corny to be like I'm into the marketing, but they have like this whole catchphrase where it's like it's like computer code and it's like escape will make me God. It's like so cyberpunky and so cool, and it has that. It has the music. It has the vibes. It has. Also, the secret weapon could potentially be the Marathon stuff because this is connected to the original Marathon games. They say like, the way it kind of rolls out, it's a little different. It's like adjacent to it, and events might have happened differently than.
I don't know. Like we're probably going to be a little bit more cool on it than a lot of other people were. Like we were there by surrounded by content creators, and like they were really having a great time with it, and we were having a good time too. I guess.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, like, I don't know, just my general vibe is probably like a few notches down versus other people in terms of excitement for it. But like, I really want to finish this conversation by being like, anyway, those are my thoughts. Where are you guys at?
I am aligned, definitely. Okay. I, especially as someone who I might be one of the more negative ones because I'm not into this type of game, but I look for reasons to really get me into it. And, the jury's still out. I'm kind of mixed on if it's going to get me in. But again, I'm like into Bungie. I like what they try and do. I like what they have accomplished. And there are things here. There are nuggets that I want to see where they go.
If you've seen Saturday Night Live, there used to be a skit with Vanessa Bayer and Fred Armisen, and they would be acting so happy about their one friend. It was usually like the leader of a country or something. They would say like, oh yeah, he's so great. We love him. And then they'd get all quiet and be like, but I will say... And then they say something bad about the person. That is exactly how the discourse around Marathon feels from the people who have played the game.
I'm sorry, I can't really hear you guys. Are you saying that he doesn't respect other people?
No. Oh my God, no.
He's like smart
Concord, and he's like so sweet.
I love the guy, best guy in the world. Love him, love him. But like, even like when we're like, we're getting tickets.
I will say,
I watched a Friends Per Second podcast where they discussed the game, and it was a lot of this style of speaking at the end of the episode. Like, oh yeah, the art style is cool, but it's also bland for XYZ reasons. The gunplay is solid, as expected from Bungie, but I don't know, I was just expecting more. Yeah, it has PvE elements, but the missions felt really rudimentary and boring.
Another of these activities is one that involves finding various numbered panels tucked away across the map. When you activate the first one, you see a number, and then you need to find another panel that has the same number on it. That will then direct you to a different part of the map. You do that like 3 times, and then you get a nice loot payoff at the end. Right now, I don't think these activities are working. Some of them, particularly that numbered panel activity, are really tedious to complete, and you spend an inordinate amount of time kind of just looking for this panel, and it should be easy to find, and then you have to spend all this time schlepping across the map to do it all over again. I think the supply drops aren't providing enough reward to get people really willing to contest them. There's another activity that involves calling down a high-level NPC who dies a little too quickly. Much of this can be smoothed out with some tinkering and tuning, but there's a bigger foundational issue related to all of these, and it's that you're spending so much time fighting NPCs and doing these activities that you spend less time fighting other players than you should be.
And this is all during initial playtests or the closed alpha, when the game is fresh and new and exciting. So if you're feeling bored at that time, then that is not a good sign for the long-term health of the game. It doesn't seem to scratch a single itch from any of their target audiences. Everything is surface level and nothing is deep enough to really get invested in. Sure, maybe it does have a deep and expansive endgame, but endgame won't do shit for you if people aren't around to get to that endgame. Sure, they may have an ace up their sleeve, but my advice would be to play that right away and market that shit. Otherwise, people really aren't going to have any interest. The Vault of Glass raid was new and exciting, and it arguably saved Destiny 1. It is going to take that type of innovation for this game to succeed, and truth be told, I don't think modern day Bungie has it in them. There's also the fact that casual players may get shit on very soon after launch thanks to the snowballing effect of how extraction shooters work. I know Bungie is obviously trying to balance this and walk the fine line between incentivizing people to power up so that they're stronger, but still allowing undergeared players to have a chance, but that is a very tough equilibrium to achieve. And as those noob players fall off, it will devolve into very sweaty games where people aren't having much fun, and then they will get sick of it as well. You see this happen constantly in Trials of Osiris. Super low player populations mean every game is sweaty as hell. This then in turn drives away people because they're not having fun, making the player population even lower, and then the game's even more sweaty, and it's just a downward spiral and negative feedback loop. Bungie has said that their ranked mode is going to be amazing, but Destiny's comp scene has sucked ass ever since Not Forgotten went away, which is like 7 years now, so I don't have much faith. Plus, it sounds like this mode isn't even really fully developed yet, and neither is the story apparently. Man, I'm getting big Destiny 1 nostalgia there.
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
People are gonna shit on them for this. But like, during the presentation, they said repeatedly, they're like, we have changed direction on a lot of things as we go during the development of this project, right? They were very transparent about that. Now, that's probably not very smart marketing, right? Because it can definitely let people spin a message of like, this has been directionless and you've rebooted it constantly and whatever else. The reality is, they're being open about the fact that they've changed it up as they've gone. And
another game that went through development hell and went through numerous iterations and reworks and had a subpar story was Anthem. It had grand ambitions to be this and that, and it never lived up to the hype and died an unceremonious death. A long time ago, Marathon was supposed to release in 2024, and then it got pushed, and finally we are getting it in late 2025. That is not a great sign, especially when you see that all we are getting are 6 characters and 4 maps.
Much to my surprise, Marathon isn't as far along as I had hoped it might be.
Again, Anthem had a very similar story, of being pulled in many directions during early stages of development, and then EA put the pressure on to release it, so they developed as much as they could in the late stages and released it very half-baked. Marathon feels very similar. I think if Marathon is not delayed, then it's going to see the exact same fate as Anthem. A really exciting launch, followed by utter indifference just a few months post-launch. Do you really think 5 months is enough time to add in all that is missing from this game? I don't. I think it needs core structural reworks. It needs a hook and to do something different that no game is bringing to the table. Right now, it's seemingly just a mishmash of a bunch of other games. It doesn't seem like it's trying to do one thing super well. But who knows, maybe that will appeal to a bunch of people. I could be totally wrong. This is just my take, but again, I'm just some guy on the internet. Let me know down below what you think. Are you excited for Marathon? Indifferent? Have you played it? Are you dying to play it? I'm really curious to hear. If you're still here, thanks so much for watching to the end. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then go subscribe to my other channel where I'll be putting more gaming analysis videos. Sadly, this channel is a Destiny channel, and my non-Destiny videos have performed very poorly, so I'll be starting a new channel dedicated to the wider gaming sphere. I'll be giving my thoughts on all things occurring in the gaming industry, so it'll be a lot of game reviews and news discussions and more. This channel will either fade into irrelevance, or I will just use it for posting gameplay clips and doing my YouTube live streams. Lastly, a huge thank you to my channel members. Your support means the world to me. Follow me on Twitch at itstizzle7 if you want to watch me stream live. I'm playing a ton of different games and having a lot of fun doing so. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.